The ANC's 6th National Policy Conference is set to get underway this weekend at Nasrec. Several issues, including changes to key policies on immigration laws and the step-aside resolution, are expected to be debated. The conference will kick off with a media briefing, in fact later this morning, as well as a gala dinner later tonight. ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe is in studio for more on preparations for the day. Ed, welcome. Good morning. Thanks for coming in. There were questions around whether the conference would indeed go ahead, but it's all systems go?
Yes, well, it is all systems go. Morning and morning to your viewers. It is all systems go. We're quite ready for conference. This morning we will have a press briefing expected to be addressed by the head of policy, Comrade Jeff Radebe, dealing with our discussion documents on corruption and state capture. That emanates from the work that was done by the Zondo Commission. We would have established a task team, and we said that we needed the task team headed by Comrade Jeff to assist formulate the ANC's response to some of the recommendations. They have already put forward a report to the National Executive Committee. We have considered a number of issues that they would have brought up. Part of that was the ANC changing its method of work to be able to make sure that there is a greater alignment between what we are doing as the party and what happens now in government, as well as the role played by our own deployees, to make sure that the notion of building an ethical developmental state finds resonance even on how the ANC conduct its own work.
I've been reading through the policy documents over the past couple of weeks. It's incredibly dense.
Yes.
There's a lot to it. You talk about issues of corruption, state capture. There's been discussion that the policy conference will also deal with issues around immigration laws. Is it fair to say, though, that the step-aside rule will dominate many of those discussions this weekend?
Not quite. I mean, it could be. Just to remind your viewers how we got to the whole notion of step-aside. At our 2015 National General Council, when we dealt with the restoration of the credibility of the African National Congress, we then said that we need to come up with mechanisms that will allow the ANC to regain the trust and confidence of the people it leads. Part of what we considered was this step-aside resolution. The 2017 conference, the 54th National Conference of the ANC, then took this as a decision, left it to the National Executive Committee to develop guidelines. Now, our structures are beginning to talk about the consistency through which you are really implementing that, which would then come, which might just be a subject that comes up for debate, looking at what would have been debated or discussed at some of the provincial general councils. But I think what we said as the National Working Committee is that the National Executive Committee has got a responsibility to make sure that in providing leadership to its own structures, it also gives accountability on what it had done to implement resolutions of conferences. Part of it is this one. We say, okay, we have developed these guidelines where we picked up that there were gray areas. These are the things that we would have really brought up to make sure that in its own execution of or in implementing our own resolutions, we are consistent in our own approach.
Yeah, that's what KZN said, right?
Yes.
It's inconsistent in the approach. It should be scrapped.
But also, you'd recall that some of the issues that comrades would want to identify as inconsistencies would have been brought about by the fact that it was for the first time that the ANC was aiming to implement this. The constitution of the ANC, Rule 27.70, already speaks about some of the issues that cadres might want to bring up. But the policy conference of the ANC is a festival of ideas. Cadres of the ANC are dynamic. The expectation is that we'll be able to engage.
Right.
Where we are required to provide leadership as the National Executive Committee, we'll be able to do so. What we can assure the viewers of Newzroom Afrika and the rest of the South Africans is that when conference rises, when the policy conference rises on Sunday, it will rise more united and focused on battles ahead. Today we've got that briefing that is happening now at 10. We've got a gala dinner in the evening. We're expecting our structures to start registering. What is even more interesting is that almost 10% of those attending this conference or those coming to this conference are journalists.
Right.
About over 200 journalists have applied for accreditation. So it now tells you the kind of interest that an organization like the ANC attracts, even from members of the Fourth Estate. We have arranged, yesterday we took the media on a site visits. We have allocated studios, media lounges, press rooms. We even have got a team that will be able to assist the media to make sure that when you want to talk to chairpersons of committees or those that will be presenting papers, they are made available to talk to you. Mm-hmm. So we want this platform of the policy conference to be one that allows the ANC to regain the trust of our people, put forward policies that will allow the ANC in 2024 to be able again to assume the position of governing the country, but with policies that are not just radical, but that are more responsive to the plight of our people.
Mm. It's an important one, isn't it, in the build-up to the elective conference in December? But
it is.
But we're running out of time, Mr. Mabe, so I want to ask you this last question. And it is the elephant in the room. In fact, when I started our conversation, I said there were some questions around whether it would go ahead, the policy conference this weekend. You talk about the policy conference also, being a road towards regaining the trust of our people. Those were your words.
Yes.
What about regaining the trust of your own employees who haven't been paid?
Well, we have discussed this issue. We are a caring organization. The reason why the ANC would not have been able to meet or fulfill its pay obligation towards staff is because the ANC is a non-governmental organization. It depends on the fundraising environment. Mm. Now, the fundraising environment has been largely depleted by the Political Party Funding Act. There are thresholds attached to how much a party would be able to raise. Now, you can only be able to raise up to 15 million rand. And you look at the pay bill of the ANC, it's quite huge. You look at our own employees. So, as part of reorganizing ourselves on how we do our own things, we've got to also make sure that we deal with some of these issues. Mm. To make sure that we are able to meet the desires of those that commit their time, are devoted, love their own organization.
Mm. For them, it's not just a job.
We feel the plight of our own employees. We feel we can hear their voices out there. We have said to the leadership of the ANC, raising monies to be able to sustain the programs of the ANC must not just be made the responsibility of the Treasurer General. The entirety of the leadership of the ANC, all of our structures must be involved. Mm. Initiatives or innovative methods of raising funds, such as crowdfunding, ought to be embraced by everyone in the ANC.
Can I ask you, do you have a date for when those employees will be paid, those 200 and odd employees?
Well, I'm sure we will start rolling out payments even before we start with the policy conference. We are already talking to their own employee representatives. We might not be able to meet the full kitty, but part of the things that needed to be addressed have already been addressed. Issues like your medical aids. The Treasurer General has already told us that they are making sure that we roll out. But you see, it's just that we can't say it on a year, but you really need a lot of money.
No, certainly.
To run the ANC. And you depend on fundraising. You see, unlike a company that produces products or yourselves here who sell advertising and all of that, we depend on well-wishers. We depend on donations. And it's not always easy. With the State Capture Commission and some of the
revelations.
This some of the discoveries that were made at the Zondo Commission. So not everyone is still as comfortable as they would have been in the past to associate openly with a political party. Some of them don't want their identities known, whereas the Political Party Funding Act imposes that those identities have got to now be revealed.
Mr. Mabe, we're out of time. But yeah, that would be devastating to those employees. We can assure them, talking here, that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that we address their situation. We are with them. They need to know that. We are standing with them. We understand their commitment to the organization. Pule Mabe, spokesperson for the ANC, joining us here in studio. Policy conference kicking off with a media briefing at 10 this morning.